Hello, beautiful people. Today is 9th of May. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Guys, you all know Rabindranath Tagore, Gurudev, the first non European to win the Nobel Prize in Literature and the one who composed the national anthem of India. He needs no introduction. Guys, 7th of May was the 159th anniversary, birth anniversary of Rabindranath Tagore. So we'll take a quote from him. Guys, Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was a joy. I awoke and saw that life was a service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Friends, this particular quote represents the understanding of life that a person gains as he develops towards the maturity, as he develops towards the level of understanding of one's own self. Guys, Rabindranath Tagore says that initially a person believes that the life is only about joys and the memorable pleasures. However, as he takes the part of self development, he realizes that the life is a service and service is itself a joy. So, guys, it underlines the spirit of duty as well as dharma. And, guys, this particular quote is highly relevant in your GS paper number 4, that is ethics, where things such as meaning of happiness, etc., have been asked into the past year question papers. So, guys, let's begin with today's analysis. Guys, this is the page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper. And the first topic that we will be taking today is very, very important for your GS paper number 4 ethics. Now, guys, in all this aftermath of the COVID 19 news that is coming, there is one development which has taken place, that is the COVID 19 National Ethics Committee. Now, guys, first of all, why we are discussing this? It is simply because of the fact that ICMR has now started the Placid trial. And guys, these Placid trial are to assess the safety and efficacy of convalescent plasma therapy, which we have discussed so many times. However, for the starters, if you don't know, then the convalescent plasma therapy is a technique in which we take the blood plasma from a person who had recovered from the COVID 19, and that blood plasma is transfused into a person who is right now suffering. Now, in this therapy, what will happen when we are transfusing the plasma? Then the plasma carries the antibodies which have been developed into this person when he fought with the coronavirus. And when these antibodies will be transfused into the sick person, they will help him also to fight the COVID 19. Now, friends, as usual, we will be taking this very issue from the very scratch. So, guys, the story starts from 2014 when there was Ebola outbreak into the world and it was becoming very much dangerous. Now, as it was something new, so therefore there was no drug for the Ebola. However, soon the pharmaceutical companies started working on some drugs, and drugs such as Remdesivir, Zmap, etc. came into being. However, problem with these drugs is that they have not passed the clinical trials, and before passing the clinical trials, we don't know whether they will be efficient or not. Now, guys, the problem came that as people are suffering, what should be done? Whether they should be given this drug or whether they should not be given this drug. What if after giving the drug, their condition became even more worse? And there is also a possibility that after giving them worse drug, they could recover also. So, guys, there was a kind of a mist which was there into the air. And guys, as slowly the time passed, in 2016 WHO came out with the guidelines which were called as monitored emergency use of an unregistered or investigational drug guidelines, or simply MURI guidelines. Now, guys, under these MURI guidelines, it was said that if there is an emergency such as outbreak or pandemic, some experimental drugs can be given, but there should be very close monitoring. Now, after seeing the MURI guidelines, what India did, India passed their own version of MURI guidelines, which were called as National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical Research in Human Participants. And the summary of this guideline is that if any experimental drug is being given during the outbreak, then there should be two things. First of all, there should be the informed consent to the of a person to whom the drug is being given, and second, there should be the National Ethics Committee which should review all this process. Now guys, what had happened into the case of India? India started witnessing the COVID-19 at the start of 2020, and as it was an outbreak, one condition, and number two condition, there was no medicine for this particular thing. So right now what should have to be done? We should have to follow the Muri guidelines as well as national ethical guidelines, and under these guidelines we need to carry the treatment. But what happened? Government started experimenting on people. People were being given the hydroxychloroquine. Moreover, people were being given different kind of drugs, and in most of these cases there was no consent which was taken from the people. A various instances hydroxychloroquine was given to the doctors, and they were not informed that there could be certain side effects. Moreover, they were not being given an option whether they have to take or they can also refuse. Simply they were administered the drugs. So questions came that why this is not being followed, and why there is no National Ethics Committee which has to be formed. So guys, in the light of this particular thing, finally government decided that it will make the COVID-19 National Ethical Committee which will look for the consent whether it is being taken or not, and will further allow which therapies should go through and not. And now this particular committee has given an approval that the convalescent plasma therapy should be undertaken, and it should be seen that what are the impacts onto the humans. But guys, this was all the technical angle. Now certain questions comes. Question number 1: though we had constituted legally and formally the ethics committee, but in actually spirit are we following what has been mandated? On the ground it can be seen that the people don't know what they are being administered, which is actually an ethical concern. Now guys, people are being used as an experiment, and according to the philosopher Immanuel Kant, people cannot be used as a kind of a means, rather they are the end. So experimentation on people will not suffice. Guys, yes, there are other considerations also, that anyhow they might die if the drug might not be given to them. But when you are writing answers on ethics, you can't simply write one sided view, you need to give these kind of things also. So guys, there could be a very much probable question on ethics, but these particular things have not been covered by any of the newspaper, so please take it from here. Now guys, this was all about this. We'll be going to the next. Now, guys, here's again a news on page number 1, where the National Green Tribunal has directed LG Polymers to pay a fine. Now, guys, we will look into certain aspects with respect to our exam point of view. Guys, under this particular thing, we will take that in the case of disaster, how relief could be given to the people, and what are the relevant Supreme Court judgments in this particular regard. So, guys, taking from very scratch, India faced a worst kind of human disaster in 1984 when the Bhopal gas tragedy occurred. Now, before Bhopal incident, India followed the concept of strict liability, which was based on the British law. Now, under this particular legislation, an operator has to pay the liability if it causes any accident. However, there were certain exceptions also into this particular regard, and the exception was such that the operator will not be liable to pay for the damages if it has been caused by an accident which was not in control or the hand of the operator, or if it has been caused by the act of God. So in these two circumstances, damages were not to be paid. Now guys, after 1984, India was in shock, so there was a need to consider the concept of strict liability. Moreover, even after 1984, in 1985 there was one more gas leak incident in Delhi. So therefore, into the aftermath of all this particular thing, Supreme Court in MC Mehta case defined the concept of absolute liability. Now, under the concept of absolute liability, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, who delivered the judgment, said this thing that a manufacturer has an absolute liability, that he has to pay for the compensation irrespective of any act of God or any other factor. So there is an absolute liability, and this thing was much more reformed than the concept of strict liability, where there were a lot of loopholes. And since then, the concept of absolute liability is there. So guys, under this particular light, the LG polymer case, they have to pay the compensation because there is no loophole of which they can take help. But guys, one problem had occurred, that National Green Tribunal, which ordered that compensation should be paid, has used the word strict liability in the place of absolute liability, which could be something else, and we will know as time will proceed. Now, guys, one additional point from my side. See, these all are the Supreme Court precedents. Earlier, there was a strict liability, then there came the absolute liability. But is there some legislation also which makes provision for the fines and the liabilities? Then, yes, guys, there is one law which was passed in 1991, and it is called as Public Liability Insurance Act. Under this particular act, it is obligatory onto the industries that they have to take a special insurance policy which will be used into the case of some chemical disaster, and from this insurance money, compensation will be paid to the people who have been impacted. So guys, this was all about the legislative as well as judicial proceedings in this particular regard. If question comes in GS paper 3 or 2, please use it. Now guys, we'll move to the next news item. Now, guys, here's a news item on page number 1 as well as on page number 11, where the United States Special Representative for Afghanistan has asked India that India should participate into the peace process that is going on. Now, guys, it is something different because many a times USA has deliberately kept India out of the peace progress. And guys, as recently we had also discussed, 6 plus 2 plus 1 special meeting that occurred recently, and there India was not invited. We had discussed that in editorials also. So guys, we'll look something into this background. First of all, friends, please don't go too much into the back details because they are not usable for UPSC exam. Now, guys, as you might be knowing that the problem starts from 2001, when the World Trade Center in USA was attacked by Al Qaeda. And since then, Al Qaeda is taking refuge under the umbrella of Taliban, which operates primarily under Pakistan as well as Afghanistan. So, guys, since 2001, troops have been stationed in Afghanistan because it is being assumed that the Afghanistan is the breeding ground for terrorism. Now, nearly 19 years have been passed, and this particular thing is leading to problem on various fronts. For example, it poses a problem on the sovereignty of Afghanistan. Secondly, it is draining the treasury of America. Thirdly, nothing concrete has came out of this entire arrangement. So, after 19 years, it has finally been decided that a peace deal should be signed between the USA and the Taliban. And in this particular direction, in February 2020, a peace agreement between the USA and Taliban was signed into the Doha, Qatar. Now, guys, as a part of this agreement, it was decided that the prisoners of Taliban who have been held in Afghanistan, they will be released. Secondly, it was decided that the troops which have been stationed in Afghanistan, they will leave completely within the period of 14 months, and Taliban has to take responsibility that they will ensure the peace into the region. But in all this scenario, there was a problem that Afghanistan's own government was not represented, and all the promises on the behalf of Afghanistan was made by the USA. And the problems is now coming on the release of certain dreaded Talibani prisoners. Afghanistan government wants that they will not release these prisoners because they are very much dangerous. And now Taliban is angry that the deal is not going through, and now the deal is about to fall. And now, guys, as an attempt to save this deal, recently 6 plus 2 plus 1 meeting also happened onto the Afghanistan question. However, the funny thing is that India was not invited here because it was said that India is not the neighbor of Afghanistan. But now, as the deal is falling, USA is insisting that India should participate because India is a responsible country into this region. And guys, just for this thing, the special representative had held a meeting with the government and now insisting that India should participate. But guys, if I give you a broader picture, then India had certain concerns. Concern number one is that India wants that the deal in Afghanistan should be led, owned, and controlled by Afghanistan. But it is not happening because various other actors such as China, USA, they are having their interest into that. Secondly, India wants that the role of India should be bigger into the region. It wants to come as a developmental partner, but that particular thing is not being taken care of. Thirdly, guys, India is more concerned that the political crisis which is going on into the Afghanistan should be resolved on the urgent basis and the first priority should be given to it. Guys, with respect to the political crisis, what happened on a side note, recently the elections held in Afghanistan where there are two people who claim that they should be the president. On one hand, there is Ashraf Ghani, and on other hand, there is Abdullah Abdullah. Though Ashraf Ghani won the election, but the Abdullah says that Ashraf Ghani won the election by the corruption. So India wants to solve this political crisis. And guys, fourthly, India believes that this entire deal is not a peace deal at all. Rather, this deal is a deal to take USA out of Afghanistan, and USA don't want to fulfill any responsibility. And fifthly, India has a problem that India is the worst impacted country into the region by the Afghanistan owned terrorism, but no mention on the Indian concerns have been taken placed. So, guys, this is the entire crux of this particular news item which has been mentioned, as well as the background information. So, these are the problems, and the USA's special representative have gave just a kind of answers that USA is always committed to democracy and that kind of thing, which are lacking any kind of substance. So, guys, please keep these things into your mind. And now we'll move to the next news item. Now, friends, here's a small news item on page number 2. Though nothing substantial has came out, but I want to give you a food for thought for your GS paper number 2. Now, guys, I'll tell you the background what has happened. As lockdown has been imposed and social distancing is to be observed, the schools have been closed, and now the schools are providing the education to the students by the online mechanism such as virtual classes. Now student or children from the middle classes or upper classes can afford this online education, but from the poor strata of society they cannot access this online education simply because they don't have the tools to access the online education, which are the internet as well as the computers or mobile tablets. Now, guys, there is a fundamental right under Article number 21A, which provides a right to education, where children can ask education as a matter of their fundamental right. Now, guys, earlier, in order to fulfill the right to education, government built the physical infrastructure such as the schools and the classes and all that kind of thing. But now, as the COVID-19 has came out, the physical infrastructure of education is proving to be defunct, and now the new infrastructure such as the internet is now needed. So, guys, whether article number 21A also includes the right to provide internet as well as a computer to the students, because in absence of these two things students will not be able to access their education. Now, guys, a question comes that do state have the affordability to provide internet and computer to all? But more important than that is this: we don't care for the affordability because this thing is a fundamental right which are protected by the constitution and guarded by the Supreme Court of India. So what state should do and how state will be resolving this particular crisis? And the same thing has been asked by the Delhi High Court from the central government and from the government of Delhi as what should be done. So just guys keep this into your mind. And now we'll go to the next news item. Now guys we are into the editorial section, and the first editorial we'll take is the contempt for labor. Guys, this particular editorial takes about the changes that have been made into the labor policy, and in this particular context we will look certain background also. Now guys, going before into the labor issues, first of all, where does the labor as a subject lies? Who has the power to make any law onto the labor? Now friends, first of all, article number 246 of the Indian Constitution provides for three lists into the seventh schedule. These are the union list, concurrent list, and the state list. Now guys, the subjects mentioned into the union list, on them only the parliament can make the law, whereas on the subjects mentioned into the state list, only the state legislature can make the law. Whereas on to the subjects mentioned into the concurrent list, both parliament as well as states can make the law. Now guys, labor as a subject, now generally it is understood that it is into the concurrent list, which is true, and because of that particular thing there are more than 100 labor laws into our country. But that is only the one side of the story. Guys, actually some subjects which pertain to labor are also written into the union list. So, at two places, the labor issues have been written into the concurrent list as well as the union list. So, in a nutshell, guys, both have the power to make the law onto the subjects of labor. Now, what has happened? As the lockdown has been proceeded and the industrial activity is very much low, due to which economy has suffered, and in a bid to recover economy, recently, the Madhya Pradesh government has decided that the working hours can be extended up to 12 hours a day, and weekly working hours can be extended up to 72 hours. Whereas at the same time, Uttar Pradesh government has decided to suspend the labor laws for next 3 years. However, certain labor laws pertaining to women, bonded labor, child labor has been kept in place, but majority of labor laws have been suspended for 3 years. Now guys, in this particular direction, if we talk about the Madhya Pradesh, then a large exemptions have been given, as it is allowed under the section number 5 of the Factories Act. But there is one contention that under section number 5 of Factories Act, the state government can give exemption but maximum for 5 months, and later if it needs to be extended, then the approval from the central government is needed. So guys, now the thing is left open to the center government's interpretation as what they feel that what should be the right strategy to go forward. So guys, in this direction an argument is being made that the labor, they are the most one of the most vulnerable section of the society, and if these things will be taken forward, then they will left only onto the mercy of their employers, and they will be then exploited too much, and all the labor rights which have been won till now will go in vain. So guys, the center government should take a responsible stand on all the developments that are going on. And guys, as we are talking about the center government has a large powers with respect to the labor reforms, as I have told you that they jointly have the power to administer, because labor lies into the concurrent list where the parliament has an authority. Moreover, there are large number of issues into the union list also, where the only center has the authority. So center should do some proactive work here. Moreover, guys, as we are talking about the labor rights, then guys, recently a couple of years back, central government had came out with four labor codes, and guys, in these four labor codes, 44 existing laws have been merged. And guys, speaking about the proposed labor codes, there will be four. That is the code on wages, code on industrial relation, code on social security and safety, code on health and working conditions. So guys, these codes will be discussing in a nutshell with all the issues that are there with the laborer. So friends, these are the reforms that the central government is pushing, And now coming back to our article, the suggestion is that whatever changes the state government is taking, because they have the power, that change has to be approved by the central government also. So therefore central government should adopt a kind of more welfareist approach and should not dilute the labor laws unnecessarily, otherwise it will lead to the exploitation of laborers. Now, guys, this particular editorial depicts as what should be the India's foreign policy responses as we are going towards an uncertain future. Guys, the present times are very much uncertain and the things will be changing very much rapidly. Guys, if we talk before the COVID-19, what developments have taken place into the world stage, then we can find that number one, Asia Pacific became the region which was the piece of economic growth. And in Asia Pacific, certain countries were the harbingers of growth. They were Mighty Five as well as China. Guys, Mighty Five, it stands for, M stands for Malaysia, I stands for Indonesia, T stands for Thailand, another I stands for India, and the V stands for Vietnam. So these were the countries which held the most promising growth rates. And guys, because of the growth, because of the prosperity, also comes a certain uncertainty, rivalries. And therefore, the Asia Pacific also became the region which saw a kind of arm race, and the countries they started to build up arsenal. So though one hand there was prosperity, other hand there was the tensions also. And in all these tension, we witnessed the USA phenomena, where USA was imposing sanctions over sanctions in order to sustain its economic growth and its version of in America first policy. So, guys, this was the scenario that was going in Asia Pacific. However, if we talk specifically about India, then India faces the fear from the Chinese front. And on this particular development, it is said that India should come along with the USA and a kind of a military alliance or any other type of alliance should be forged. So, what should be the stakes for India in this particular respect? Should India do this particular kind of thing because it is also facing the threats from China or not? Now, guys, if we see the foreign policy of India historically till the present date, then it can be found out that India has always placed their national interest above all the kind of interest. And in this particular line, making a kind of a permanent alliance does not make sense, because you need to carry course correction from time to time, and in that particular thing having a permanent alliance will restrict the mobility. Moreover, guys, if we take example of Doklam issue of 2017, where the China was asserting its hegemony over Bhutan and indirectly was threatening India, then it was seen that no country came to the rescue of India and nobody showed a kind of a considerable interest, because at that point of time on other side there was China. So a argument can be made that even if a kind of an alliance or grouping is forged, then also India will not be getting any benefit from that particular thing. So, friends, in all this background, it is clear that India's priority is to counter China. But how to do that particular thing? In this particular way, there could be two ways either. First of all, India can engage China bilaterally. But here it has been seen that this particular way has not been proved fruitful, because the bilateral relations depend on trust, cooperation, and support of each other. But as the India tries to rise, the China becomes apprehensive, and China tactfully, directly or indirectly, tries to drag India down. So bilateral front benefit has not been achieved. Second way could be that India should take the help of USA, not militarily but diplomatically. But USA is still not uncertain as how its own foreign policy will be going. Moreover, guys, as the economic order is changing, it is also very much clear that USA will not be a superpower for that much long time. So certain more ways are needed to be explored. And guys, as we are talking about more ways, then these ways will be coming from the internal structures of India. And India does not requires to move towards any external front. Internally we need to reform our political business as well as economical business. Guys, often India talks lofty ideas. For example, India says that we want to become Vishwa Guru, or the world teacher. But this thing is being said at a time when India lacks the basic capabilities in terms of knowledge and technology. We are one of the largest technology importer. The majority of electronic appliances are coming from countries such as China and Korea. Military capabilities are being imported. So what we need to do, we need to work on our political structures as well as economical structures in such a way that they make India self sufficient and induces much flexibility in India's structure. Otherwise, guys, India will be missing the bus to the developed nation club. Moreover, guys, as India will be doing this particular thing, there is a window, because right now the rivalries between China and USA have grown to such a level that for some time being they will be absorbed into their own narrative, when where USA is running behind China and China is running behind USA. And secretly, if India works on their internal structures, India can give a befitting response to the world in some years to come. So, guys, these are the changes which are required. So, guys, this was all about this article. Now we'll move to the next. Now, guys, here's a news item on page number 10 where three drugs are offering hope when they are given into the combination. Guys, so far clinical trials have not been over on these particular things, so therefore much is not confirmed yet, and we only need to see the name of the three drugs which are being given into the combination. Now, guys, these drugs are the oral lopanavir ritonavir. The second drug in this direction is the ribavirin, and the third is injectable interferon beta 1b. So these are the three drugs. Now, guys, when we talk about lopanavir ritonavir, it is used for the treatment of HIV, whereas ribavirin is used for treating hepatitis C, and interferon beta 1b is an anti-inflammatory drug. So when these drugs have been administered to the patients, it has been seen that their recovery rate has been increased and the time spent into the hospital has been reduced considerably. Therefore, this could be a promising drug into the times to come. However, not more than this we need to see. Now we'll be going to the next news. Now, guys, here's a small news item on page number 1 where a new road to the Kailash Mansarovar has been opened. So, guys, here we will look certain points with respect to prelims. Guys, first of all, right now there are three prominent ways to reach to the Mansarovar Lake and Mount Kailash here. One route is via Sikkim Gangtok, and this particular route goes through the Nathula, and you can go here. Second, you can go via Kathmandu, so you can go here. And the third way is via Uttarakhand, and in Uttarakhand you need to pass the Lipu Lake Pass, and via these Lipu Lake Pass, you can reach to the Mount Kailash Mansarovar Lake. Now, guys, what was the problem? Problem was this, that here is a place in Uttarakhand which is called as Dharchula. Now, up to Dharchula, connectivity is fine, but beyond Dharchula to Lipu Lake, the connectivity is not that much good, due to which a large time was to be taken. But now, what has happened? The Border Roads Organization had made a road from Dharchula to Lipu Lake, and because of this thing, the journey time will be reduced substantially. So, guys, please remember that the Lipu Lake Pass is in between the Kailash and Mansarovar Lake. Now, guys, if we talk more about this particular development, then first of all, Mansarovar Lake is the source of Brahmaputra River and has various religious values. And, guys, now if we talk about Mount Kailash, then Mount Kailash is worshipped by the followers of Jainism, Buddhism, as well as Hinduism. Now, guys, first of all, Jainas, they believed that near the Mount Kailash there is a Mount Ashtapad, and this Mount Ashtapad was a place where the first Tirthankar of Jainism, that is Rishabh Dev, he attained the moksha here. Then, why Buddhists venerate the Mount Kailash? Because according to them, Lord Gautam Buddha, he was conceived around Mount Kailash. And thirdly, Hindus venerate the Mount Kailash because according to them, it is the abode or the place of Lord Shiva. So all the three religions venerate this particular place. Guys, please remember all these things for your prelims. Now, guys, here's a news item on page number 16 where the olive Ridley turtle's mass hatchling has begun at the Rishi Kulya rookery. Now, guys, first of all, hatchling is the phenomena or it is a point where the turtles come out of their eggs. So it is they are the hatchlings, the small young ones. Now, guys, the second concept here is the rookery. So, guys, rookery is a place where a species comes to give birth. So, rookery is a place. And guys, then we come to the Rishi Kulya. So Rishi Kulya is a rookery which is in Odisha, and every year thousands and millions of olive ridley turtle come here. They give their egg, and then their eggs hatch, and now these are the hatchlings. So these hatchlings have came out of their eggs at Rishi Kulya. Now, guys, first of all, if we look location, then guys, you can see that it is Odisha, and three locations are the most important for the olive ridley turtle. That is the Gir Matha, the second one is the Devi Mouth, and the third one is the Rishi Kulya. So right now the Rishi Kulya has been mentioned here, and you can see that into the near the Rishi Kulya there is also the Chilka Lake as well as. So guys, please keep all these things into your mind. Moreover, Rishi Kulya the name comes from the Rishi Kulya river, which makes a mouth here. So guys, as we were talking about the olive ridley turtle, I told you that they give eggs here, then these young ones come. So guys, the article mentions that they hatch in nearly 45 to 60 days, and it depends on to the temperature of the sand as well as surrounding regions. Now guys, finally, if we talk about the IUCN status of these olive ridley turtles, then they have been given the status of vulnerable on IUCN red list. And one more thing, they are the most in numbers into the categories of the turtle. Guys, these turtle come every year from the Pacific and come here and give their eggs. So guys, this was all about this particular news item. Nothing much is there into the article. So guys, this was all about today. I hope you are liking the video. Thank you so much.